I wanted to this evening give the school committee an update and the community on where we stand with the school committee's plan desired to renovate Emery Grover for school administration and operations space. And let me just briefly touch upon some things that have been happening over the last year. About a year ago, you voted an option to redo Emery Grover as an historic renovation for the community at a cost of around $28 million. You had a warrant article at last May's town meeting for design funds, but you pulled it back because you understood the community needed to discuss this further, town boards needed to understand the process better, and ultimately, over the summer, we've been working with the designer, with the team, and the PPPC to reconsider the scope. And so the project that was originally 34,700 square feet has now been reduced to 21,000 square feet. Where there was an addition in the back of the building, there now is not one. The proposal is to essentially renovate the existing structure, perhaps with a small add-on for an egress elevator. And the cost, therefore, has been reduced, the proposed cost, including retrofitting hillside for temporary space, all of the design costs, remediating the site is proposed at $20.8 million. What I want the school committee to understand in the community that even though this is a downsized project, it still retains the essential services, in-person services that are critical for our community. So the services we provide today, we would be able to provide and actually make sure there's space to provide services we don't even know of in the future, including ample conference space, which is sorely lacking both in the schools and within school administration. We also explored a variety of different other options for school space and administration. I do want to spend just a moment on each one of these. Some members of the community have asked, and we have explored, lease space, and what could that mean? The designers originally sought out some estimates for lease space, and they did receive some. And those estimates were received during the height of the pandemic when there were new opportunities to lease space. For example, PTC Corporation was eager to lease space, but now PTC Corporation has been taken over by DGI, I believe it is.
The PTC relocated and IDC moved their headquarters into the building, right. Basically took all the space.
But there was a time when PTC was looking for tenants, and that's no longer the case. TripAdvisor at 400 Kendrick has, if you will, downsized a bit, and they're looking, we understand, to potentially lease space on their 5th and 6th floors. So what we did recently is we put out another request for information. What other companies, organizations have space that we could explore? No one responded to our request. So we're left with anecdotal information, and that includes what I mentioned at 400 Kendrick, which is TripAdvisor, that they have the potential to lease space for about $900,000 a year for the space that we would need. I will tell you, I don't think that school administration and operations space on the 5th or 6th floor in an area of town that is not easily accessible to families is a wise choice. But I want you to know that potentially exists in the community, and there may be other spaces as well in the community. What we would need to understand about leasing is that those costs would have to be added into our operating budget, and there would be initial costs of $1.5 to $3 million to outfit the space so that it would meet our initial needs. There's also been conversation about selling the EG building and using the proceeds to fund a construction. In the original design report, there was an analysis of this completed. And at that time, in 2020, when the analysis was completed, there was an estimate that the parcel, building and lot, which is about an acre plus or minus, would be potentially, depending on what was built there, worth up to $3.6 million for a developer. Now, the big idea is the town sells it, uses the proceeds to fund new construction somewhere. Now, key thing is new construction somewhere else, because really the only other else is the Hillside School site. We've explored other sites in town, as I mentioned on here, and there really aren't any possibilities. Recently, I contacted two developers, Petrini Corporation and Dorenzo, and I asked them very informally, I said, I can't do this on my own, but what do you think about this parcel? What would you do? Both of them got back to me. Both of them said, please share this information. Of course, it's a neat location in the center of town. Both of them agree that the parcel is worth to them either $2 or $2.1 million and no more. I said to one of the developers, well, the report we have is up to 3.6. His response was, no way. I potentially be interested in something less than that amount if the town would change parking requirements, height restrictions, and setbacks, all of which, as far as I understand, would be unlikely on that site. So selling the building is something that certainly the town could explore, but not for what our original analysis showed. And in any event, what would the proceeds go to, and what would you do with the proceeds? And by the way, one of the developers said that that site could be ideal for retail and residential, but at his price of $2 million and no more. Moving, as I suggested, is something that's not feasible. We explored other sites in town, and it's just not possible given the sites available. And then, of course, some have suggested to us, can we relocate to another school? Well, the reality is that we build our schools tight in Needham, and there just is not space for school operations beyond what we're proposing. Now, we did pull IT out of the design from the original renovation project, and we're leaving it both at Hillside and at Broadmeadow. And so that cut down on a lot of square feet. So we believe those programs can remain there for the foreseeable future. But other than that, there really is not the kind of size and space, parking even, for school operations in one of our buildings. Wish that were the case, but unfortunately it's not, certainly at this time. The other area that we explored, and this is where in a bit, if you have heavy questions, I'll ask our friends and colleagues Steve and Hank to help out. We also explored Hillside. And we asked our designer to look at what we might be able to do at Hillside, because it's available to the schools. It's not far from the center of town. And this is what we've determined. There's the possibility, first of all, of knocking down EG on the Highland. This has nothing to do with Hillside, but knocking down the existing building at 1330 Highland Avenue and building new. And you can see that the cost is slightly higher than the renovation of the current structure. The other is to demolish and build new at Hillside for $22.6 million, and then possibly demolish the building, construct a new building with IT. Now remember, IT is already at Hillside, so if we just took what our current plan is, we wouldn't have space for IT, so that's a problem. So we included it in this option, and you can see the cost there. And then a partial demolition and renovation at Hillside with IT is at $27.4. All three of those options will not be eligible for Community Preservation Act funding, which the historic renovation is. And they would require us to remain at EG for another 3 or 4 years, which frankly I think is untenable for several reasons. One thing I will point out is that the costs are higher at Hillside. Part of that is because of the soil remediation that needs to take place on that site. As the community knows, it's a site that the town and the state actually are monitoring to make sure that the air quality is good because of the spillover from Microwave Development Labs, the neighbor up the hill from Hillside. So, if town meeting discusses and approves the design funds on October 25th, this is what would happen. The architect and PPBC will get to work on finalizing some design plans to retrofit Hillside temporarily, and also begin the work of designing a renovated EG building. We would also submit a new application to the CPC for funds by December 1st. That's when that's due. Last year, the CPC chair indicated that it would be eligible for up to $6 million in funds, and that is attractive because that's also part of the funding stream and planning for this project. And then the school committee would ask a second time for construction funds at the May town meeting, and then, of course, if successful, design, planning, and construction would occur, and possibly a renovated EG building would be open in 2024. If town meeting does not approve funds, I will recommend to the school committee that you abandon the building within the year. You will also have a budget presentation from me later in December that will include up to $900,000 in lease costs. Plus, we will have to determine how, through the capital plan or otherwise, we can secure funding of approximately $2 million to fit out lease space. And what's important to note is these funds would be in addition to other school operating costs that we will be requesting. So I want you to know, I think that over the last several months, there's been a lot of work, there's been a lot of discussion. I think, quite frankly, we've done our due diligence on this project, and we've kept, I know I have, our eyes wide open on what makes the most sense. You have previously voted a warrant article for design funds, so there's no action you necessarily need to take. I guess what I want you to know, behind the scenes, as we have studied all of this, I concluded that an historic renovation at Emery Grover not only is smart and affordable and efficient, I think it will be important to the community, and I think it's really the best solution at this point for town meeting to consider.